Welcome everyone to this latest edition of Neighborhood Scope, where we at ORF we discuss one country in the region and try and do a bit of a deep depth with, of course, experts. And today we have a great panel. We always have a great panel, but again today we have another great panel. We have Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das, a distinguished diplomat. She retired as Secretary East in the Ministry of External Affairs, but before that she was the High Commissioner to Bangladesh. We have Dr. Smriti Patnaik from the IDSA, probably one of the few people in India who know Bangladesh like the back of her hand. We have Professor Shahab Inam Khan, who's a professor at the Jahangir Nagar University in Bangladesh. And we have Smita Sharma, a journalist who covers foreign affairs, also domestic politics, and has visited Bangladesh recently, if I'm not mistaken, and reported from there. So she is one of the few people who has been on ground zero and reporting from there. So this is the panel today, and I don't think I need to tell anybody about the tumultuous events that have taken place in Bangladesh. We still don't know whether the situation is settled, moving towards a settlement, what the future holds. We were actually planning to do this edition sometime last month, but I think it was too close to events and we wanted that perhaps things should settle down some. I don't know if they have settled down and to what extent, if at all. And that is what we will try and explore here today. But quite clearly, not all is well, not just inside Bangladesh, but I think also from an Indian perspective between India and Bangladesh. And we need to see how this relationship proceeds going forward. And what happens in Bangladesh now? How does what is the trajectory of democracy in Bangladesh? Whether we will see a democratically elected government in the coming weeks and months, or we'll have to wait for some other events before democracy returns to Bangladesh. We don't know, but we'll have to wait and see how that works out. So let me just set the ball rolling with Ambassador Das and asking her question, which has always been there, which has been doing the rounds actually all over the place, which is a kind of an indictment of India, if you will, where a lot of people are saying that, look, whatever has happened in Bangladesh is India's fault. India was investing in a person and not in the people. We were not investing in Bangladesh, we were investing in a party. My own personal reservations on that aside, which I think is utter hogwash. But I want your take, because you've served as High Commissioner in Dhaka. Were we investing only in a person, or were we investing in the people? Because I would have thought that if we are investing in projects in Bangladesh, that is for the benefit of the people of both countries rather than for the benefit of a party. But what's your take, ma'am?
Thank you, Shashant, and thank you for inviting me. Always a pleasure to come here. I think it's a very valid point to discuss, because I was also, it always baffles me when, people say this, that your relationship was only with a person. Governments deal with governments. Obviously, as a government, you will deal with the government structure that is there, which means when you have at the interaction at the level of head of state, it will be head of state, the presidents. It will be head of government, the prime ministers, external affairs minister, 50 plus mechanisms between India and Bangladesh. So obviously that's the whole structure of G2G relationship, as we call government to government relationship. Besides which, a major stakeholder in today's world in any relationship are the business community. So you have a whole structure of B2B relationship, the business to business relationship, which is always very vibrant and which is very important to take your relations forward. Then you have the P2P relationship, which is a people to people relationship. So people to people relationship is never structured in the sense that you can't structure out people and have relations between people of one country and the people of other country in a sense in which it is visible, in the way in which a B2B relationship and a G2G relationship is visible. Now, everything that, obviously being a close neighbor, sharing such a long border and sharing culture, history so much together, obviously the entire relationship is built around serving the people of both the countries. What is the point of your good relationship if it doesn't lead to peace, prosperity for the region, and at the end of the day, it benefits the people? So let me give a few examples. I mean, like, take for instance our projects. The train links between India and Bangladesh, the 4 train links which were sort of stopped in 1965. Actually, till 65, the border between India and East Pakistan was pretty loose. It was not a hard border. People could move around. There was something called an India-Bangladesh passport, which was issued to people who were in the neighboring regions, and they could come and go. These train links were operational. And it was only after the 65 war that, the Pakistan government actually literally picked up the rail tracks and removed them. So we've now done the job of putting the rail lines back. So who does it serve? It's for the people. People are benefiting. The Akhoda-Agartala train link, the train has been inaugurated, it has not been operationalized. But if you see the amount of people who cross the border at Akhoda Agartala, it's just huge, because airfares from Agartala to Chennai are cheaper than airfares from Kolkata to Chennai. So what would you do? And now there are these bridges and the road is very good. You start from Dhaka in the morning, you are in the border in about a few hours time, and you take a flight from Agartala and you are in Chennai by evening. So all this is serving the people. This is only connectivity. Now let's look at the kind of scholarships we give. Even in the middle of all this, I don't know if you noticed, 550 Bangladeshi students have just come to India, and IITs do a special examination for them in Bangladesh so that they get an opportunity to study in Indian IITs. Besides this scholarship, there are scholarships for, commemorating the 50 years of our diplomatic relation. We called it the Subarno Jayanti Scholarship. I think 1,000 scholarships were given. There was something which we have been doing for a long time, which is a youth delegation. A large number of 100 young people come from Bangladesh to India for youth programs. Then you have training programs. I mean, that covers so much, from civil services, police, judiciary, to teachers, and to top Indian institutions. These people come in. Okay, now even if you dismiss this as being part of government, I mean, at the end of the day, all that the entire structure of the relationship, which is executed through government mechanisms, MOUs, agreements, is all geared for the people of the country. So it's not fair to say that the relationship was only with one person. And of course, tempers are very high now in Bangladesh, and for everything India is being blamed. But definitely the relationship was a very robust relationship. And you also hear about all agreements were one-sided. I mean, if anybody in Bangladesh thinks that we used to give a blank piece of paper which was signed and then we filled in the blank, it never happened that day. I mean, look at our negotiating history. There are a lot of young people here. I'm sure they go in depth into subjects. Read the joint statement. If you say something about a particular project today, you will see the MOU emerge only after 7 years, 8 years, sometimes 10 years. So there is a process which goes in. It is not correct to say that it is only between one person and one person. It's a government to government relationship Sheikh Hasina was in power for 15 years. And for the first, in 2008, she came back with an overwhelming mandate. So, the questionable elections are only after 2014 onwards. But we have achieved a lot in our bilateral relation, and it's not, it's all geared to benefit the people of both the countries.
Let me just ask you a follow-up on that. There's been a lot of talk about, of like you are saying that, look, we've done a lot for at the people-to-people level. Is it even worth it? And I'm being the devil's advocate, okay? And I'll say, and I'll tell you the reason why. Because no matter what you do, the kind of stuff which we heard coming out of Bangladesh when this upheaval was taking place seems to suggest that whatever was being done, had been done, is being done, is water off a duck's back. In the sense that, and again, this is an Indian Foreign Service, what should I say? It's a kind of an obsession with you guys that you keep talking about people to people. You do it even with Pakistan, right? And I keep asking, look, what's the audit of this people to people thing you're doing? What does it have to show for at the end of the day? That when there is a political crisis in a particular country, the guy who becomes the first whipping boy is India. So what the hell are we getting out of it? Why are we even getting into this? Let's deal with people at the government level and be done with it. If you want to do business, do business. Don't want to do business, don't do business. I'm being the devil's advocate out here.
Look, even if you do only government to government, I mean, as I said right in the beginning, people to people relations are not structured. It's not as if, you have an MOU agreement or whatever, or there is a template that this is the template I'm going to follow when I'm doing people to people. People to people relations with every country is different, and it depends upon the history that you have shared, the cultural contacts that you have. So it's very different. So at the end of the day, even if you take people out of the whole equation, you take business out of the whole equation, if it's only between business, government and government, it is people who constitute polity. It's people who constitute nations. It's people who constitute government. So, at the end of the day, it's all for the people. And especially in the case of Bangladesh, I think it's very important because you have to see geography. It's evident. 5 of Indian states have their borders with Bangladesh. For the northeastern states, the connectivity projects that have been achieved till now are absolutely very, very important. I mean, you can move goods from, say, western coast of India to Meghalaya, to Tripura, to Sabroom, through the Chittagong port. And it's a short distance. So I think people lie at the center of, the way governments, even, I mean, if you take even domestic politics, all of it is for the people of the country, right? So you can't really take people out of it. And especially for for India and Bangladesh, because we share history, we share, cultures. And even if you take at a micro level, see, it's in the Meghalaya region, for instance, the Garo tribals, they have a different relationship. When you come to West Bengal, that's a different relationship. When you go to Tripura, it's a different relationship. It's the people from Kumilla and all who during partition just simply moved over to the other side, a short distance, and that's where they are. The families are on both sides of the border. So it's very complex in the case of Bangladesh, and I don't see anything moving without people being at the center of it. They have to be there.
Shahab, if I can turn to you. So we now have a situation in Bangladesh where there is a kind of an interim government. We don't know how long it's going to last. There is no clarity on whether it's there for a couple of weeks, months, years. Some of the statements which we are hearing seem to suggest that, well, they are here for as long as it takes to bring in constitutional and political reforms. But then again, those are going to be reforms which do not enjoy a popular mandate because, it's not an elected government by any stretch of imagination. So that is one situation. You have the army also in Bangladesh, which has played a role in the past. But I would be interested in knowing how effective uh, a force the army is right now in Bangladesh in terms of being able to influence policy and in terms of being able to influence politics in Bangladesh. Does it remain an effective force, or has it been pushed to the sidelines because of the events of the last couple of weeks? What exactly is the situation, the political situation in Bangladesh right now, sir?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to return to ORF virtually, though. I was a regular visitor back in time. I think I would start my answers to your fascinating question with my previous speaker's point of view. Let's talk about two critical concepts here. The first is people. I mean, I agree that Bangladesh-India relationship is complex and extraordinarily versatile and diverse. That means that Bangladesh's relationship with India cannot be only seen through one prism of government to government or business to business or people to people. It's a combination of everything. But the problem remains when Bangladesh is being explained from Delhi. When the question of people comes in. I mean, who are these people that we are talking about? I mean, if you go back to the Awami League regime, the people means those who supported Awami League and rest of the country was absolutely what I would call pariah. And the result was, the cumulative result was the months of June and July and August, where the government even lost the basic sense to hold political communication with the people they deemed as Razakar or anti-liberation. And henceforth, the rest of the nation came together. Now, the question is whether Delhi understands that part of the story. The 5th of August, repeatedly we got to see in the Indian media and many of the Twitters, it's all about the minority case. The question is then where the hell that 700 people who died has gone into the narratives of Delhi and Indian media. And I think that's where the whole problem lies in defining people. The second problem is essentially the government to government relationship. I mean, yes, 2009, we had a very rational election. 2014 onward, Mrs. Sujata Singh came to Dhaka, and Daily Star reported that if Jatiya Party is not coming to election, then there will be BNP Jamaat in power. And then 2018 election was wholeheartedly supported by Delhi and Beijing, none other than these two parties, and of course Moscow. And then 2024 comes in, and if you look at November, December, and January reports, Avinash Palikar or anybody in that matter, that Delhi was instrumental in changing Washington's behavior in terms of the election that will come to Bangladesh. So that clearly lays one fundamental problem in front of us, that when we mean that Bangladesh, what Bangladesh is Delhi thinking about? Now, that's one part of the story. The second part of the story, as you have rightly mentioned, that interim government is here for a rational period of time. It will certainly take a long time. I mean, when I mention long term, doesn't mean that 1 year, 2 year, 5 years. I would rather say a reasonable time for them to get their acts together. The interim is not fulfilled yet. There will be few more who will be inducted into the cabinet. And then subsequently, this is the first time in our history when an interim government came where there is no political institutions are functional. I mean, at least 2007 and 8, both the major political parties were existing. Jamaat was existing too. But this time, BNP was in complete disarray. Awami League, literally starting from prime minister to imam of the mosques, fled away. I mean, literally, there is no administration, police existing. I mean, on blink of eyes, we just got to see that there is no police anywhere. So then, obviously, BNP has to get their acts right to become a fully functional political party after 15 years of being in jail. And Jamaat has to get its acts right because essentially they have a huge number of legal issues pending to be resolved. So when interim government came, whenever they're talking about election, the problem is they don't have the political parties ready to think about election. The second problem for the interim government, apart from this fiasco or the vacuum, is the problem of the institutions. I mean, if you look at the intel agencies, largely dysfunctional. As I mentioned, police is dysfunctional, and the judiciary is going through a massive reformation, and for which they certainly need time. Now, the constitutional reform is still debated what form of constitutional reform will come. Now, the question about constitutional reform is the parties have to come together and agree on three principles. What would be the state ideology? Are we going to change? Are we going to keep it? Or are we going to have a new ideological formation as the public demands? The second problem in the constitutional reform is that whether these reforms will reflect public consensus, henceforth the party consensus. I mean, the parties have to come together in this matter. And the third problem is human resources. While we do have reforms, then certainly we will need to have efficient human resources to carry on. And as you see, if you read all the reports that how many cases are being filed on a daily basis on the basis of even simple as corruption. I'm not getting into the killing and genocide and genocidal sprees and so on. So, which means this is a fascinating time when the government is struggling to revive the institutions first, and then to reform, and then to go for constitutional reform. As for your question, what is the role of the military? I mean, military is perhaps, it may sound sarcastic, but certainly I may say that that military is the only democratic party in Bangladesh existing. I mean, as chief of army staff, it's an irony. Chief of army staff didn't take the decision because he is the chief of army staff, or perhaps there was a lot of speculation that he is being related to the former prime minister. Will always stay at tune with the political party's demand, which has not happened. So therefore, the military will act only when the majority of the military officials will agree on the role of the military. So far, they have learned heavily from 111, 2007 and 8. I being a regular academic visitor to the National Defense College, I can at least understand that much, that military has learned in a very bad way after 2008 and 9, that it is not their job to go get into the interim government and dictate them. So therefore, I don't see that military will be influencing interim government as such, but certainly if the interim government continues to remain weak in the future and the political parties are not getting their acts right, that is the time when military may, again, the word may, have to rethink their strategies, which is right now stay out of the orbit of the interim government. Thank you.
Follow-up question. You are saying that the political parties are probably not in a position to participate in elections, but at least from the statements from some of the political parties, it seems that they are very keen on early elections. And they are very uncomfortable with the prospect of the interim government, continuing for any length of time or taking decisions of a far-reaching nature, which does not have a popular consensus backing those decisions. Like the BNP wants early elections. I'm sure if elections were to be called in 2 or 3 months' time, every political party would jump into the fray. So I'm a little perplexed by your claim that the parties are not ready and they would also not mind waiting for some time.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the BNP's statements over the past few weeks, it's clear that they want to give the interim government time and reasonable time. And it is very practical for them. Whenever I speak to them, they're pretty clear, because that reform and getting the election commission and the electoral bodies to become functional will will legitimately take a long time. I mean, they're willing to wait till that. And I think when they mean early election, which I'm not aware of, but when they mean early election is not that you go for indefinite periods like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Rather, at some point of time, you have to give a timeline. And I actually wrote an article last week by saying that it is very important for the interim to come up with a roadmap and essentially lay out what is their timeline or lifespan would be. So I don't think that BNP is in a position to dictate that they will be in the election in 2-3 months. I don't think that is happening. Rather, what they're saying that they want to give time to interim government to come up with some sort of solution. When it comes to Jamaat, which is even more interesting, Jamaat didn't really come up with a statement by saying that we want an early or late or any time any sort of time frame. Rather, Jamaat's logical position would be, and which I understand is rational from their point of time too, is to wait and see how the interim government goes and how the interim government functions. So essentially, I think there is an impatience in the grassroots when it comes to the political parties. I mean, we are seeing a little bit of symptom of what we used to see back in time, but not certainly this is the reflection of the party hierarchy. So therefore, I think what I would claim over here with after my regular consultation with different parties is essentially they're willing to give time to interim government, and interim government has to decide. And perhaps the interim government is essentially saying that we will require time. That can, some says 3 years, some says 2 years. But again, it depends all on the fluidity of the situation. And most certainly, there is no way we will be seeing any kind of election coming up at least a year from now, at least a year.
If I can turn to you, you've just come from the dangal in Bangladesh and you're going to the dangal in Haryana for whatever that's worth. So thanks that you could join us from the road. I don't know what's happening in the dangal in Haryana, but hopefully it should be a lot more peaceful than the dangal you've come from in Bangladesh. But just walk us through what you saw during your coverage when you went to Bangladesh after the events recently. What exactly were you seeing? What exactly did you hear on the ground? What was the sentiment? Just fill us up in with what exactly is the situation out there in your analysis.
Hi, Sushant. My apologies that I couldn't join in person because the nomination filing for Vinesh Fogart came up as a story that had to be short. So I'm actually in Haryana on the roads right now. And I'm increasingly beginning to feel that one of the reasons why we actually don't see the bloodied, violent amount of venting out of protests happening, like we've seen in Bangladesh, perhaps is the fact that we are constantly in an election cycle. There is always a moment when it doesn't build up to a pressure cooker really, but you're venting it out constantly through these state elections as well. But hello to all my panelists. And, before I come to your specific question, Sushant, if I could just take a few minutes, because I know you choose to be very provocative and you said that you were being the devil's advocate when you asked that question to Ambassador Das. But I think even that question right now, will be frowned upon in Bangladesh because at the end of the day, it's very important to realize that governments do not exist in isolation. Governments are about people, and Indian policies has always been about people, people and, looking at their perspectives, even when not just when in democracies, but even when we are dealing with autocratic regimes or the military junta, say, for instance, in Myanmar. So I think it is also India's, you can say, the big responsibility, challenge, curse as the biggest neighbor in this region to be magnanimous but not be patronizing at the same time, and to continue doing, of course, what it has been doing despite the situations currently. My apologies for that audio issue. But, I think there was also a build-up to this question that you asked about why this anger against India, having spoken to a wide spectrum of people, and I spent essentially my time in Dhaka. My dispatches are there on my YouTube station for different platforms. There was a sort of, what my previous panelist was pointing to, the fact, the optics during the G20 summit of Prime Minister Modi with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and President Joe Biden. or the statements that came right on the eve of elections. I mean, the last two elections, there were different reasons for the BNP boycotting. In 2014, we saw that happen after the entire Shahbag protests, the execution, the hanging of Abdul Qadir Mullah. But since there were questions that were being asked of those elections, in these elections, with these statements coming in just 2-3 months before the elections or on the eve of elections, really that was also a point that did not go down well. We need to remember that when Mr. Modi had visited Bangladesh, there were actually protests out there on the streets which were against the Citizenship Amendment Act. There was rioting, there were killings that had happened during those riotings as well. And importantly, I think the anger and frustration that built up against Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina for various reasons, from corruption to allegations of trampling down free speech, to enforced disappearances, the investigations into Aina Ghor or the House of Mirrors, all of that entered into this complex zone where there is that feeling that if she was able to be in power for so long, it was because she had the backing and blessing of New Delhi solidly. And also a contrarian complex feeling that, while it was a problem if India was interfering, but it was also a problem that India did choose to stay in denial of the ground shifting beneath Prime Minister Hasina's feet. I'll leave those thoughts in the first question. Coming to your question, Sushant, I think in Dhaka, as of now, because the day we were flying in, we did have Indian businessmen, students returning into Dhaka who had left in the run-up to 4th, 5th August. So on the surface of it, there is, of course, normalcy. Traffic is absolutely chock-a-block and back again, and they're not being manned by the student protesters anymore. The policemen who had emptied the stations, who had run away from the stations, they were seen as aligned with the Awami League. Also, they face allegations of having shot at the student protests when it actually took a violent turn. They have returned by and large to the police stations. The kind of right noises are being made. The students are trying to continue forward with the spirit of the rebellion, if I may say, the spirit of the movement, by channelizing it into other causes, say, for instance, trying to do flood donation campaigns, for which, of course, India is being blamed. Even on the stage outside the University of Dhaka, where this concert was being held, you had slogans splashed across that essentially blamed India for the floods. There are places where you see, if you go towards Old Dhaka or where the offices of Prothom for the directly. So I look, remains one of the biggest challenges right now for the interim government under Dr. Yunus. In Dhaka, life is pretty much back to normal. Outside of Dhaka, you're still hearing these very problematic incidents of mob lynching. Utsav Mandal, that young boy, in fact, is a very, very disturbing incident that has played out in the police station, considering that he was actually in the presence of police and army when he was hit by the mob. But fortunately enough, he has survived that attack. There is a report of a recent attack again on another Awami League, in fact, student activist who has been lynched to death. And a lot of these cases of, the attacks on Hindu minorities, which we tried investigating, which we tried looking into, we did realize that the Indian television media that landed in Dhaka soon after the events unfolded did a great amount of disservice, which it has done in the past also in a lot of cases when you see the domestic politics spilling over into the foreign policy domain, whether it's Nepal, Maldives, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, because the numbers were largely exaggerated. There was a sense given that Hindus were being targeted specifically, and large scale killings had happened, which wasn't true. The number of killings are actually between 7 to 11 if you go by the diplomatic sources, or even by, in fact, the people who are in charge of these Hindu trusts, bodies, temples, or minority editors. But yes, there have been large-scale assaults on Hindu businesses, not just on Hindu, but also on Buddhist and other minority establishments, houses, temples being burnt down. These are cases that have happened. But I think at the moment, what it is best to say is that the situation is essentially one of an uneasy calm on the surface. While things are returning to normalcy, there is, of course, a great amount of suspense about what happens next. This is a social contractual breakdown that has happened. And any kind of movement like this obviously leads to a whole amount of churning, violence. It leads to major upsets. It leads to chaos. And that chaos is not going to settle down anytime soon. I do agree that I don't see elections happening anytime before a year. But a lot will depend on really moving forward, is it going to be the vengeance of politics? The politics of vengeance, the politics of hate again, is that cycle going to be repeated? At the moment, it is understandable that there is so much of anger against Sheikh Hasina and anybody who has been affiliated with the Awami League, even those who are from the minority community. Most of them are either underground. There have been serious cases slapped, ranging from corruption to even murder, slapped against people, including journalists who were seen as, of course, aligned with the Awami League. And, the Bangladeshi media's role again had a lot to do with this anger building up, because people constantly saying that, look, our voices were being crushed, we were not being heard in generations. So you have to wait and watch whether the atmosphere is created in a rightful manner, where yesterday's oppressors, the alleged oppressors, do not become today's oppressed, and whether they are also able to come back at some point and be able to be a stakeholder in the elections. Or is it only going to be an election with the BNP and Jamaat in the running, and maybe with new forces that will come in? The students do plan to launch an outfit at some point in time. So there is a whole lot of chaos, confusion. It will take time to settle down, but I think it's important for India to really look at it not just from a bilateral prism, but also from a regional perspective moving forward, Sushant.
To you, Smriti, I need to ask Ambassador Das something. So India is damned if we do, India is damned if we don't. So if we start interfering in a country, we start pushing our weight around and telling or instructing a country on what the government should be, how they should be holding elections, how they should be conducting their relations with the rest of the world, or if we start telling countries around the world that, look, there is a serious problem in our neighborhood, and maybe what you're trying to do is not the best way of doing it. We are interfering in internal affairs. If we don't do any of this, then it's held against us that why are you not interfering, as Dr. Mohammad Yunus seems to suggest, that why was India keeping quiet? So are we damned if we do and damned if we don't?
Yes, because in the specific context of Bangladesh, I can say that there is a very strong section there which has always believed, which has never believed in having good relations with India. And and this is not, I'm not talking about 10 years, 20 years, right from the beginning. If you look at the history also, right after the 71 liberation war, why did in the public perception, India was no longer a very close friend. I mean, all kinds of rumors were spread. And so, I think that is something we have to deal with in whichever way we can. And to some extent, whatever we do, we are, our actions come up for criticism. And also, I think it's an excessively, foreign relations is seen excessively from a sovereignty point of view. Everything that the government does is seen as loss of sovereignty. I mean, there is no analysis. Obviously, foreign policy is a complex issue. Nobody expects general public to get into details of, though, the details are important in our profession. But you look at any visit, any interaction between India and Bangladesh, the first reaction in the press will be, oh my God, they've gone and given the country to India and come. Or if we come, then we've served the country on a platter to India. I mean, why? Where will we ever get away from that narrative? So I think to some extent you're right. We're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. Since I have the opportunity, I just wanted to add one thing to what Professor Khan said. See, you should also see that Bangladesh's domestic politics is extremely polarized. When one party comes to power, the politics of retribution starts. When the other side comes to power, the politics of retribution starts. So this whole issue of dealing with a whole cross section, that atmosphere is not there. I was there during the 2001 election also. I saw that election. I saw what happened after that. So it's the same thing which in a sense is happening now. It's this sharp polarizing politics is something which which to a large extent we have to deal with as diplomats.
Thanks a lot for your patience. You're known for it. So, you are one of those who has interacted, for example, very closely with the Jamaat and the BNP. But before I come to the Jamaat and the BNP, one of the questions which is often raised in India to people like Ambassador Das and others is that India has always put all its eggs in one basket, right? And my question always has been, was there another basket in which we could put our eggs in? Simply because given the kind of, very pernicious politics that the Jamaat and the BNP followed in the past, for anyone to expect that India will have very good relations with the Jamaat and the BNP, I think is like living in a cloud cuckoo land. These were people who were openly patronizing terrorists. They were sponsoring terrorism in India. They had given sanctuary to terrorists in Bangladesh. All kinds of things were happening. There were terrorist organizations which were given a free hand. The Pakistanis were playing havoc inside Bangladesh. So when people make this charge that, why was India putting all her eggs in one basket? What would your position be on that?
Like you, that the other basket was never available to us. And I would also say that I have spoken to both BNP and with Jamaat. Generally, India has no conversation. We don't deal with the Jamaat Islami, but with the BNP, India has conversation. I know some of the diplomats were instructed from Delhi to make contact with the BNP post 2008 elections. I think 2011-12, India had got in touch with the BNP. I think Ambassador Pankaj Saran was there. I remember he going to the BNP office and meeting some of the leaders. In spite of what happened between 2001 to 6 was actually a security nightmare, which is very difficult for any Indians to get over it. But in spite of that, India's policy was also to get in touch. Now the question is that the BNP, especially the Sujata Singh meeting, because I've spoken to the people who were present in the BNP chairperson's, office when this particular meeting took place. And the question was that, having a kind of multi-party elections. Now there is an argument in Bangladesh that India wanted a multi-party election because it wanted to give legitimacy to, Awami League. But also at the same time, how do you conduct an election? So obviously from Indian points of view, if there is a multi-party election in Bangladesh, it is in fact reflection of the will of the people because all the political parties participate. Now, whether there is a conducive atmosphere to have an election in Bangladesh, it is for the internal government to take a call on that. And obviously, India can't say that you do political reform. Imagine telling Sheikh Hasina that you don't know how to govern, you don't know how to, conduct your election. I don't think the people who are accusing India would have tolerated even that, when India is being blamed. Second, in 2018, prior to the election, the BNP delegation had visited India. And I will just come back to Begum Khalida Jia's visit to Delhi in, I think it was 2012. She was laid a red carpet welcome. She met not just the leader of opposition at that point of time. I think Sushma Swaraj, she met also Pranab Mukherjee, because I know the BNP people who got in touch with me at that point of time told me that they're still trying to get in, get an appointment with the President of India, Pranab Mukherjee. And they were not able to get an appointment because they were seeking it at the last minute. And I was told maybe the Awami League is trying to prevent that particular meeting. I'm just saying because I've spoken to people at that point of time, the BNP people who were accompanying the opposition leader, Begum Khalida Jia. Third is that she also, I think when she went back to Dhaka, her party member questioned in the press conference that, our constituency is a very different kind of constituency. So the reach out to India is probably will not be beneficial as far as the vote politics is concerned. And she herself said very clearly that we don't have to look at, when we drive, we don't look at the rear view mirror. We also look forward, and that particular press conference is available in the newspaper. I am just speaking of the Daily Star, which carried this particular press conference. Third is that prior to the 2018 election, when the BNP leaders visited and met everybody, including they made a visit to IDSA, and we provided the forum, because as a think tank, you provide the forum to everyone. We have hosted, I think Awami League hardly we have hosted, because maybe the long period of time we have only hosted the BNP, the Workers' Party, and those kind of people who have wanted to come here.
IDSA holds opposition leaders, ORF holds people in government.
So therefore, that point of time, when they went for the election in 2018, obviously, that was an election which Awami League did not allow the BNP to participate. It was completely rigged election, because on the election day, I was very much present in Dhaka. I went out to the election booth. Hardly I saw anybody being present. And the Awami Leaguers themselves said that, the election has happened in the previous night. They're very frank to admit that. But when I asked them that if you're rigging the election, giving the BNP 6 seats, it's very surprising. They themselves said that, it was a little too much. But after that, in 2024 election, January, the BNP was in no mood to get in touch with India. It stuck on the release of Khalida Zia from house arrest to go to a Western country for her medical treatment, and also they said that the restoration of the caretaker regime, the American visa restriction which came, which I think Smita was also mentioning, India's statement, the Biden Sheikh Hasina meet in the G20, because Bangladesh was the only invitee among the South Asian countries to attend the G20 as the guest. And in that particular thing, the Western countries said that there will be a visa restriction, the visa ban on anybody seen as obstructing the election. So that point of time when I met everybody in the BNP, including the top leaders. And the 2018 election, don't forget, the BNP participated in the election only towards the end. And 2024 election, I was told, I won't take name, I was told that we are asked, the leaders who are in Dhaka, they're asked that what did you get out of 2018 election that you will participate in 2024 election. And both times, you speak of Indian interference, Indians saying this, Indians saying that. But the BNP was constantly in touch with the Western countries for the delivery of the election, both in 2014, it did not happen, and also in 2024. The Western visa restriction was welcomed by the BNP. The Jamaat has been very, very quiet, I would say that. But in spite of that, I also, when I discussed this matter, I said, why don't you participate? If you don't participate, there will not be any kind of obstruction to the electoral process. So therefore, when will the visa restriction come in? Otherwise, when there is nobody obstructs the election, so obviously what kind of visa restriction you are going to have? But they obviously were in no mood. Obviously their experience, I completely understand their point of view in terms of what happened in 2018 election. Obviously they were not hopeful that 2024 election will be any different. So therefore, the Jamaat Islami, in fact, they were also toying with the idea of conducting the election, till the November rally took place, where the BNP leaders were arrested. The BNP was very clear they will not participate. But on the same day when the BNP rally was happening in Dhaka, Suhrawardi Udyan, the Jamaat rally also happened. And that happened without permission. So the thing is that, there is a lot of complexity. It is not the BNP and Jamaat. There is also Jamaat and Awami League angle also. So we should not forget that the kind of relationship the Awami League was trying to get, minus BNP to get Jamaat. So, we may think in India that probably the main enemy could be Jamaat from our perspective. But I think as far as Awami League is concerned, it was a very, very personalized kind of relationship which she had with the BNP. Completely demolishing the BNP cadre, and the Jamaat cadre, survived because, they had a very different way of surviving as they survived after 1972 ban on Jamaat Islami when they came up, 1979. I would say that.
Okay. So India doesn't talk to Jamaat, but you talk to the Jamaat. You are very good friends with them. I know that. So tell us, now that the ban has been lifted on the Jamaat, we are seeing the Jamaat come out once again in full force. We've seen an interview of the Jamaat chief making very nice noises. I don't know whether the leopard can ever change its spot. I don't buy it. But he has, at least on the face of it, he seems to be saying all the right things. Would you take him at face value? Number one, given the past record of Jamaat-e-Islami, not just in Bangladesh, whether it's in Jammu and Kashmir, whether it's in Pakistan, whether it's in India, it's a problematic organization. So how would you take that last statement? Do you think they've reinvented themselves? They've suddenly become Bangladeshi nationalists instead of pan-Islamists? Do you think they are a party who would be willing to live in peace with India? Doesn't look like, considering the kind of stuff which we are hearing happen not in Dhaka. And this is a question I will put to Smita later on. Most journalists probably just allowed to go to Dhaka, not venture beyond that. And the really bad things and nasty things are not happening necessarily in Dhaka, but they're happening in the outlying areas where nobody needs to go. Even the CNN only goes and covers a flood and assumes that the flood is of India's making. Obviously, that journalist doesn't know anything about hydrology, but maybe that's why she's in CNN. But so I wanted to understand from you, what exactly are you seeing as far as the Jamaat is concerned?
Jamaat was placed by Awami League, just I think of 2nd of August, and on the ground of that, Jamaat was involved in terrorism.
But it has been hounded for more than a decade.
They were technically debarred from contesting election. They were technically debarred from contesting election.
This one.
Jamaat.
This election.
No, all the elections.
All
They're
elections.
deregistered as a political party because the argument which was given by the government at that point of time, the Jamaat constitution, which only allows the Muslims to be the member of Jamaat Islami, does not actually, is not sync with the Bangladesh constitution, which is a secular constitution. Therefore, this particular ban which came on the ground of terrorism actually is something which is very difficult to sustain. So I'm not surprised that the ban has been lifted. And I was surprised that the Awami League never thought of banning Jamaat on the basis of what they did in 1971, because there has been a demand on this particular thing. And within Jamaat Islami, there has been question that why the government has not banned Jamaat. And my understanding is that if the government would have banned Jamaat, the Awami League government, they would have reinvented themselves as a different party and blaming their reinvention as a different party based on the government ban. They needed a justification, and that justification was not given by the Awami League at that point of time. Now the question is that Jamaat wants to do a very different kind of politics. It wants to be participate in the election. Because you see new groups coming up, like for example, the JMB, which considers everything in Bangladesh, is actually not in sync with Islam. If you would have seen the poster which came up in 2005. So when you compare these, JMB, ISIS, affiliated groups, which was very much active in 2016. So Jamaat in that context believes in in election. Obviously, their approach is like everywhere else. It's a bottom-up approach. Islamize and then capture the power through that, through election. And unlike the groups which want to capture power and then Islamize, top-down kind of approach. Now, Jamaat also has faced, division within. There are youngsters within Jamaat Islami who have questioned this, Jamaat's participation, in, supporting the Pakistan regime in 1971. And this question is not very new in Jamaat. In 1980s, if I remember very correctly, I think 1983, Abdul Ahmad Qadir, who is, I think, currently with the Khilafat Majlis, he had presented a letter. He had written a letter and presented it to the former Amir Ghulam Azam of reform within Jamaat, and the leaders who who are accused of playing a negative role in the liberation war should not be part of the Jamaat or reinvent and have a new name. Now, this issue also has come up, like for example, Abdul Razak and the Amar Bangladesh Party, which is a breakaway faction of Jamaat Islami, is also there. And the same person from Amar Bangladesh Party is now, I think, heading the tribunal, International Crime Tribunal. Tajul Islam, who was, people say, who was former Jamaat, but anyway, the Amar Bangladesh Party has come up from within Jamaat. So therefore, it also has faced that kind of problem, but Jamaat still has its own base, So I was not surprised that, they have made their appearance, and many people tell me, including my Jamaat friends who don't want to comment when I ask them that how much of your student organization was in this particular student, uprising. So they keep quiet. Otherwise, Jamaat generally say no, but they did not, wanted to confirm it when I asked them. So the question is that obviously they want to be participating in the election, and my understanding is that obviously he will make all kind of right kind of noise because they want to participate in the election. And Jamaat is one party which does not make any kind of wrong noise, especially at the leadership level. For example, when between 2001 to 6, when you had all those, Bangla Bhai and others, coming up, you will see the BNP minister linked to them, but you will not find a Jamaat minister linked to them. That operation is very, very different. And so therefore, obviously, they have left the BNP. I also saw the interview which BNP General Secretary Fakhrul Alamgir did with Indian Express. He very clearly said that, don't speak up the Jamaat, we are not with Jamaat, because within BNP also there is a lot of discussion regarding BNP's alliance with Jamaat. So I would say that, obviously, I don't find anything wrong in his statement, because there is nothing in a Jamaat statement which you really pinpoint and say that you're wrong in that. I have not come across.
No, I'm not asking you about whether it's wrong or right. Even I don't think there was anything really wrong in what the guy was saying. It was a political statement. But I must say, I was quite surprised about his take on India and relations with India. Frankly, it's been a pretty poisonous organization. Do you think it's defanged? It's lost its poison? It's actually become moderate? I don't know. Do you buy that?
I would not say that it has, it actually...
You don't want to lose your Jamaat contacts and comment publicly.
Not like that, but I think they have their own cadres, and the cadres, especially whenever I have met mostly the Jamaat people, but the Chhatra Shibir is always little reluctant when you ask them for any kind of meeting. I think in all this also we are forgetting there is Hizb ut-Tahrir, and which they were banned in 2007. And as far as I know, they are very much there. And also at the same time, I think, it's very difficult to say whether they're defanged, because unless until they are in power, they were ministers. But I think during the BNP time, they managed to spread, the organizational network had a greater spread because they occupied two ministries, social welfare and the agriculture ministry. And you know how important these ministries are in the Bangladesh context. And later, of course, Motiur Rahman Nizami, who was Amir of Jamaat Islami, he became the industry minister. So they basically concentrated on building the organization. So if you ask me, defanged and all, all the terrorism that point of time which was happened, I would say mostly the BNP ministers, I would say, not the Jamaat.
Professor Shahab, if I can turn to you on this whole issue of militancy, terrorism, Bangladesh has been quite badly affected by it. Again, there was the RAB, which was at least seemed to be a pretty effective organization. Of course, now it's a three-letter word. But the thing is that in recent days, we've seen some rather dubious characters being released from jail. Uh, People with known association with not just local but also international terrorist organizations. And there is a lot of disquiet in India as to what exactly the interim government is playing at. Are we going back to that period of 2001 to 2006 that Smriti was talking about just now? Are we going to see some of that come back? Are we seeing a reversal of all the progress that has been made? What and since you deal a lot in terrorism, you study it very closely. What is your analysis of what might be happening?
Thank you very much. I think we're we're stuck in the past. We need to move forward. The very simple reason is, if you look at the rise of the Generation Z, has overthrown a mighty political party in just matter of 2 weeks. That's something absolutely extraordinary. So the discussion that Shruti and you had is essentially 20 years back. What happened? 15 years later, 20 years move forward. If you look at Bangladesh, this is absolutely a different Bangladesh, the new generation of voters, new generation of people who have come to the upper echelon, middle echelon, and lower echelon of the society. So therefore, I think the conversation that we had back in 2001, 2006, and probably 2009 has largely become dormant. I mean, let me start with one of the comment that you have made, and which made me very intrigued when you say that whether India is damn if it does and whether it is not. The very simple issue is, when the foreign policy comes to a moment when damn if we do and damn if we don't, then it is not a foreign policy, it was just a political policy. So therefore, the problem lies is the way we see Bangladesh's political parties is extremely parochial. Now, the whole discussion about Jamaat that I was listening to, and yes, Jamaat had a very complicated past. So is Awami League. I mean, even if you look at Awami League's 15 years, I mean, what a terrible mess it was. I mean, look at the Digital Security Act. The moment you say something, you are behind the bar. I mean, is it better than Jamaat's past? If I take Jamaat's, if it was at all a rogue party, I mean, certainly not. I mean, look at the people. I mean, everyone, every Tom, Dick, and Harry, or every top echelon is behind the bar. The people who has been released, if you look at their legal proceedings, and I had the privilege of reading many of their legal documents, the cases, is so ridiculously weak, which doesn't even stand in the court for 20 minutes of discussion. I mean, you have sent somebody by saying that this guy is a terrorist. I mean, absolutely, I agree. If there is a case of terrorism, then what is the content of your case? And the case is absolutely on the basis of, we heard that he's a terrorist. You can't do that, I mean, in a civil country. And that's where the problem is. I mean, I'm not saying that giving free cheek to everyone is the best idea, but certainly the cases that I have looked into is absolutely ridiculously weak cases. The second problem is, when you have mentioned that, what about the political parties beyond Awami League? Didn't Washington reach out to all the political parties, whether it is CPB, Jamaat, or BNP? Didn't Beijing? I mean, look at the 5th of August, the 6th of August, the Chinese ambassador was with everyone. Now, that tells you a very good story, isn't it? Now, when I look into the extremism was, even in 2014, 2015, I was repeatedly saying, don't overuse this particular Jongi thing. I mean, the Jongi, in a sense, that terrorism, extremism thing. There has always been a trend of extremism. That has been the case across the South Asia. I mean, Sheikh Hasina has always remained silent when the minorities were being persecuted in India. I mean, look at Northeast India, for an example. Had she been able to speak up something, she would have probably gained vast majority support immediately. I mean, this cannot be only the minority thing is for Bangladesh and rest of the world is absolutely pious. I don't think that works. Every party has Subramaniam Swamy factor. I mean, look at Mr. Subramaniam Swamy's statements. I mean, in Bangladesh, everybody read. I mean, Tom, Dick, and Harry, everybody read. I mean, talking about taking 1/3 of Bangladesh and so on. And there are people in every political party in Bangladesh too. Does it mean that this reflects Bangladesh's public? It doesn't reflect Bangladesh's public. And that's exactly what Delhi didn't understand. My understanding of extremism in the coming years is not going to be an issue unless the interim government reflects on the public perception. And the public perception, the term secularism, it's pretty much like when COVID came, we started to talk about quarantine. Who understands quarantine in Bangladesh? Who understands quarantine in India? Who understands quarantine in Pakistan? I mean, pretty much we came up with a beautiful bag and narratives of secularism. 99% people didn't understand what is secularism. So therefore, is it a pluralism are we talking about? And that's something Awami League missed out. So Awami League became very much biased and very much obsessed with the term Jongi, which is extremism, by labeling anybody who is going to mosque and who is going to talk Islamic issues in the public, and it automatically becomes equated with non-secular entity. And that was a major narrative fault. And I wrote about it by saying that the history project or the secularism project that Awami League undertook was very much politically motivated rather than socially motivated, or perhaps to reflect or denote progress. Look at the education sector over the past 15 years. I mean, for God's sake, I'm a professor myself, and every morning I used to become scared that what am I going to do in the classes next time? So the problem was the entire education system was so polarized, and the recruitment and the structure of education was so polarized that the cognitive ability to understand the concepts such as secularism literally became absolutely obsolete, or perhaps was not being received by the society. The society became extremely. I did a very interesting study for the UN where I looked into why women wear veil. And that study was an empirical study, quantitative study. And then when it came out, what was the number one reason for women wearing hijab? Is it essentially religious? No, it was security. A significant women said that the preference of hijab comes from the security question. Now, it was conveyed to the government by saying, look, this is one issue that people are working on thin eyes, and if you don't address security issues, then they will always fall into the rightist interpretation of security, and that's exactly what is happening. Now, coming to current issues in Bangladesh, I mean, I certainly do see that Bangladesh is not going to be a typical case study of secular state. I mean, neither is India nor is Pakistan or Myanmar in that matter. I mean, we are going to see certainly a much more indigenous constructed idea of religion, which may not be as perceived by the elites of different intellectual societies. So letting the public to come out. And public essentially sees that the religion has always been a factor, will remain factor, whether it will become much more consolidated, whether it will become much more liberating, or whether it will become much more what I would say socially conducive, that we don't know. We have to wait and see how it unfolds. So therefore, I don't think that understanding, seeing Jamaat or BNP from the prism of religious construct will help Delhi at any point of time. And the last point that I think is extremely important, that if Delhi really wants to look forward with Bangladesh. And I understand Ambassador Das is here, served in Bangladesh. I'm quite sure by now everybody has figured out that the new generation that we have, we cannot really tag them with some sort of Islamophobic or non-Islamophobic. Rather, we have to see them from a much more global perspective. And most of the movements that you get to see that comes from the Gen Z is linked with the global movement too. And these kids are not isolated from the global system. I mean, these kids are absolutely proficient in terms of using technology better than you and me. And these kids are much more exposed to global issues than you and me, for sure. And these people are much more conversant and possesses ability to maneuver through different movements and different spectrum of society. So the problem that we have always forgotten is to really address beyond religion, beyond Jamaat or BNP or Awami League's ideological stance is the economic priorities. And that economic priorities is the same case for Bangladesh, same case from India, same case from Pakistan. So that's why I think we need to really see extremism much more related to whether the parties are able to deliver or whether they allow them to get alternatives, whether they allow to give them voices. I mean, former political party, I mean, former Awami League, I mean, frankly speaking, did they allow anyone to speak? I mean, the way I'm speaking, I mean, my gosh, I mean, think about it 6 months back. Probably by now I would have gotten some sort of message on my mobile that hey, you gotta be careful. I mean, that's not happening. I mean, that's the claustrophobic fear. So I think this is best time that we need to see all the political parties as political parties come forward and help them to really articulate the best of the options that they can create for these Generation G, which will be in the helm of power in the coming months. And if you look at the interim government, I mean, interim government didn't hesitate to have three, below 25 kids to be a part of the cabinet. Why did they do so? Military allowed that. I won't say allowed that. That's the wrong way of saying. Military agreed that these kids should be in the interim too. Although interim government doesn't interfere into any of the day-to-day businesses or anything, but certainly everybody appreciated by saying that this is even Dr. Yunus is going to the UN next week, and in the UN you are going to see that absolutely fascinating young motivated kids are going with him. Now that's where the whole thing is. So I would
if I might just interrupt you, I know Smita is, I don't know if we still have her. Smita, are you there? You know, I found some of the stuff which the professor said somewhat troubling because, you know, I think it's a travesty to compare something that Dr. Subramaniam Swamy says with something that a terrorist like that guy from the Ansarul Bangla says. I think to equate the two or some obscure politician saying something with no track record of violence, with somebody who's actually had a track record of violence saying some things, I don't think those comparisons can be made. His take on extremism itself is a little troubling because by that stretch of imagination, then fine, everything is hunky dory, and frankly, on freedom of speech, a lot of stuff which we have spoken about today out here. Maybe if we were in England after the new laws in England, maybe we would be in jail after this. So let's not try and put anybody else on a much higher pedestal than us. But Smita, here is the problem with journalists who have visited Bangladesh recently. Most of you guys have been limited to Dhaka. You haven't been able to travel outside Dhaka. And a lot of the crimes that are being alleged are actually taking place outside Dhaka. Which obviously are not being covered by mainstream media, like mainstream media doesn't cover anything anywhere these days, except cockfights in parliament. Nobody really covers serious news anyways. But a lot of that is happening. A lot of footage is available, some of it fake, of course. Some of it maybe even exaggerated, but bad things, nasty things are happening. To say that, minorities are entirely secure in Bangladesh and to compare the state of minorities in India with Bangladesh, I think is against a travesty. There hasn't been a denudation of minority population in India like has been in Bangladesh. So Smita, when you talk about things being rather exaggerated in what's happened in the recent months in Bangladesh, do you think you are actually missing out or let me use some harsh words, maybe even covering up on the really nasty stuff which is alleged to have happened in Bangladesh?
Absolutely not, Sushant. I think when I talk about exaggeration, it was about the number of killings, the killing spree that had taken place and the reports that had come in. And there I did specify that even if you talk to Indian diplomatic sources themselves, they do say that the numbers are way lower. Of course, every single death is absolutely unfortunate and condemnable and should not happen. Mob lynching should not have any place in a civilized society, whether it's India, whether it's Bangladesh, whether it's any other country across the world. As far as mainstream media in India goes, you have a lot of commentary to make, and I do believe that we have a lot of introspection to do. There is a serious credibility crisis, but yeah, the serious investigations that do happen in India outside of the cockfights in parliament that are done by investigative journalists who are working independently and do face the wrath of the law very frequently, trust me, when I say that with full responsibility. Now, without going into, this sort of a tutu meme into whose media is better or with a better halo or something, look, there are some points with Professor Khan that I would like to, in fact, agree with, in the sense that it is problematic. You know what Ambassador Das was saying, that when you have political polarization, it does make the job of the diplomats so much more difficult. We need to understand that anger, frustrations in societies towards political setups and formations or external forces, they do not arise out of a vacuum. I mean, when you have responsible ministers here, very senior leaders here, talking about Bangladeshis and equating them to termites for domestic political point scoring in
Smita, let me just interrupt you out there. Look, I think that was lost in translation. Everybody keeps repeating that. This is a colloquial expression कि किसी को दीमक की तरह चाट गए, right? They've done something like what the termites do. When you start translating things in English and you start translating English proverbs in Hindi, they become equally problematic. So I
Sushant,
think
without
to
wanting
extrapolate
to be the
from that, I
spokesperson for a
think that
party,
is not entirely correct.
without being the spokesperson
And
for a
you're
party,
kind of
I would
catering
like to
to
say that
stereotypes.
leaders need to know that there is a lot that can actually get lost in translation, and you need to be careful about what you talk about, much more sensitive about countries that you have a relationship where the domestic actually overspills into the foreign policy realm. So you need to be more careful when you have these relationships. I mean, at the end of the day today, also we do need to realize that whether it's COVID, whether it's the Ukraine war, there has been a heavy cost on economies. Our economies may be doing well in terms of the growth factors, but when you look at the income equities that we are talking about, the income divides that we are talking about, whether it's a Nepal, whether it's a Maldives, whether it's Sri Lanka, we have seen the entire financial crisis, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, they're being forced to flee as well, or Bangladesh. I think these are realities that governments also need to talk about and realize. And when you have trusted friends and partners, I mean, when you talk about the clampdown on speech, the draconian digital laws, and India does we always tell others that, do not interfere in our policies or do not interfere in what is happening in our country. We're sort of very quick to respond to that the moment there is any finger pointed at us at all. Justifiably so. Every country talks about their own sovereign rights. But I do feel that certain relationships, if you think they are matured enough with trusted partners, you need to be able to have more open, frank conversations within closed rooms and point to the factors that may be building up against, perhaps, I don't know what is the way. The diplomats may have a better thinking. Also for India to think that, there is no way that I'm going to try and even whitewash the problems with Jamaat, the kind of crimes associated with Jamaat or the radical ideologies that have created problems in this part of the world. But it is also a fact that Jamaat in 1971 is different from the Jamaat today in the sense that it has had a political space and political growth. So if tomorrow they do become a part of the government, is India going to wish it away? You will have to think of a way of what you do next. Dr. Patnaik, in the chronology of events that she laid out, I think those dates by themselves speak that after 2018, whether it's because the BNP also became very sort of, strict and they were very clear that they didn't want to engage at all, or whether there were not enough adequate measures taken by our sides. There was also that incident, if you remember, of a BNP lawyer who was deported, whether they were not being invited enough to these background meetings and conversations. These things do add up. It's a complex, multi-layered relationship, and it's a relationship that is important at the end of the day. So I think it is problematic to me in Bangladesh that today you have a Tajiul Islam as the chief prosecutor of the International Crime Tribunal, because he has been defending the Jamaat. In fact, people of the Jamaat who were alleged of serious crimes and killings. He himself become a joint convener of an offshoot of Jamaat. Will he be able to do a fair job? There are cases that are being slapped against Awami League leaders left, right, and center, serious cases. There are also extortionists out there. You were talking about outside of Dhaka. There are so many extortionists out there today because the judiciary has completely weakened. The police is in a state of, it's in a dismal state of affair. Even the policemen have returned. There are people who are getting calls by people saying that, you either give me bribe or I slap cases against you or your establishments get burnt down. So it's not like media is being stopped at the moment to go outside Dhaka. I personally couldn't travel because of shortage of time. And as a freelancer, I do have certain resource limitations. I cannot speak on behalf of the others, but I did see BBC reports. I did see another report, I'm forgetting, I think Al Jazeera's, which they did travel outside of Dhaka, and they did do reports on the number of establishments that had been burned down, the number of religious places that have been burnt down as well. Nobody's trying to undermine that. I do completely understand the sort of a checkered history, the fragile history, especially when it comes to the bloodied violence that plays out in the subcontinent, a lot of it stemming also from the scars of a partition to a violent, in fact, to a liberation war in 1971 itself. Those are there. But I think Professor Khan has a point when he says that if from the word go, our reactions in New Delhi were all about, oh, this is a foreign hand. Oh, this is sponsored by China. Oh, this is sponsored by Pakistan. Oh, this is the US. It took us a couple of days for the first statement, literally from the Ministry of External Affairs, to even acknowledge and say that the interest of the people of Bangladesh is foremost on our minds. I have no doubt, having interacted with a lot of people there, that these protests genuinely were, of course, led by students till for a long time. It's after 16th of July when the protests became violent, when you had allegations against both the Bangladesh police, you had allegations against the Awami League student youth wing as well, of marching into dormitories, of assaulting students, of, firing happening. Those things need to be probed independently. Can Bangladesh do that? Can these investigations happen without a cycle of political vengeance? And that's something for Bangladesh people to try and, of course, work on if they do want a new and a better future, one that is not tied to the entire oscillation between two parties that keep doing the cycle of hate between each other. But for India, I think, sometimes it does help if you're diplomat, serving or retired, do not go and try and construe everything. When you have chaos in the region, without a doubt, there will be those who will want to fish into troubled waters. They will come in. But to completely live in denial of what was happening in the country or of the reasons that led to these outbursts in the beginning, I think we are doing ourselves a big disservice by doing that. And I'll leave it there, Sushant. Also, my apologies because I do have to run for the interview.
Don't run while you are driving. I think
I'm not driving.
you'll be. That's not
colleagues.
exactly the most safest thing to do. Not where you are. But thanks a lot, Smita, for being part of this discussion.
Thank you so much.
There'll be a lot of pushback at you later on when we meet. But we'll let you go for now.
Absolutely. Look forward to.
Thanks a lot, so Smita. We have about 15 minutes, but let me use my privilege to throw a question at you. It's all on you diplomats. You've messed up the situation in Bangladesh.
Very easy targets. We are also easy targets in Bangladesh itself. So I've done 2 rounds in Bangladesh. I've done when I was a much younger diplomat in 1999 to 2002 and as High Commissioner. But I think, diplomats function under certain constraints. Obviously, we have a lot of constraints. We work under constraints. And in our neighborhood, we are under constant scrutiny 24/7. Whatever we do, no matter at what level you are posted, you don't have to be the High Commissioner to be under constant scrutiny. We have to remember the history of Bangladesh, the circumstances of East Pakistan, Bangladesh coming up, and the fact that the country has not been able to develop deep democratic roots. For years after Sheikh Mujib's assassination, we've had General Zia, General Ershad, who rewrote the history. After that, when Prime Minister, when BNP came to power, I mean, it is very well to, it's, you can say that, Jamaat and BNP, you do business with them, but, and the Chinese went and met them. The Chinese did not have the experience that we had in 2001 and 2006. And as you mentioned, that it was an absolutely horrific, traumatic experience for us in terms of our security. The insurgent groups which were operating out of Bangladesh, the day after the bomb blasts in the 64 districts, the arms hall in Chittagong, which was directly under the supervision of a Jamaat minister. So, and this is not, history which happened 100 years back. This happened only recently. Since then, the onus is not only on us to build the bridges, the onus is also on the other side to reassure us. As a High Commissioner, I have met the BNP many times, and every time I've said the same thing, that you have to reassure us that, you actually want genuine friendship with us, which is, you look after every visit, even now that transit MOU was criticized as being, you've given up the sovereignty. Have you even read the thing? I mean, has anybody read it? The constant criticism is that India is going to move troops through the railway, but there is a clause which says troops are not going to be moved. There is a clause which says it will respect all national laws and your obligations. So you see, that step BNP also has to take, to reassure the government of India. And of course, Jamaat is a different thing altogether. The Jamaat's their role is, we are very cognizant of what they have done, and the terrorists who have been allowed to, who have been freed, actually cases have been dropped, no legal proceedings have taken place. It's not exactly rule of law which is being followed. So what we are seeing in some ways in Bangladesh is what Awami League was accused of. The same, extortion rackets are operating. Why did BNP have to remove almost 500 of its workers? They've taken disciplinary action against almost 500 party workers because of doing the same thing which the Awami League was accused of doing. And as to the new generation, the young, the young students who are at the forefront of all of this, we really don't know what their ideologies, what they're thinking, what they want. We've just heard some, public statements saying that they want an inclusive government. But there is no clarity in that sense on, where are they coming from? Because clearly it's a very polarized politics, but where do they stand in this is really not something which we know.
Thank you for the insights, especially Patnaik ma'am, Smriti ma'am, and Ganguly ma'am, and all the other panelists like Shahab, and most important Smita Sharma, who left the panel. I especially thank her because she is given the report from the ground. So I have kind of two questions. So to Mr. Shahab, how do you assess India's position in this whole upside down in your country? We have just few days back, we had Sheikh Hasina here in Delhi. And afterwards, when this happened, she was again here. So how do you assess all this from your country's perspective, India's position and all the things? And the second thing is to you, Sushant.
I'm just the moderator. They are the panelists.
Okay, yes. I respect that you're the moderator, and I respect that you were being the devil's advocate, right? But the thing is, sometimes I felt like you were putting words into Smita's mouth. You wanted to say her.
Let me answer your question before I take some more questions. If anybody thinks anybody can put any words in Smita's mouth, they don't know Smita. So forget it. I think you're off the mark on that. Smita is an independent journalist. She's an old friend. She's a sparring partner. We keep fighting with each other on many issues. So if you think I'm putting words in her mouth,
No,
I'm
she
not.
didn't. She didn't let you put.
Course she
but
won't.
she was. You were trying hard.
Anyways,
Like-
we'll discuss my association with her later. Yes.
I'm Deepak. I have two questions. First to Reva ma'am. Ma'am, only a few months back when India-Bangladesh rail link deal was signed as an alternative to the Siliguri corridor, and there was a huge crime from the Bangladeshi opposition claiming that it is only for India's benefits. So the probable chance being that the BNP comes into the power in near future, how do you see the future of Hasina era's deal, like the railway deal, will they be in jeopardy? And second question is to Professor Sahab. Sir, we saw how a certain pressure group and protesters forced the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to resign and to step down. And even in Pakistan, when the military coups were deemed unconstitutional, they introduced this doctrine of necessity. So how do you see these kind of extra constitutional measures set precedent for the future of Bangladeshi governance and its stability?
Jaspreet Gupta, and I'm a journalist with Business Standard. So in fact, firstly, I'd like to back with what Ms. Smita mentioned, because I was also covering a story on Bangladesh, although I didn't have like the resources to kind of go to Bangladesh at present. So I was doing it from the capital itself. And I think when she mentioned that there's a sort of a gray area between the coverage, I'll just...
Actually, we've run out of time.
Yeah, perfect. I'll just cut it really short. So I think there's one thing that we really need to be conscious as a viewer is that the media is definitely going to polarize a lot of issues, but then that's at our part to kind of take that. Now, my question is to Ambassador Das. So I think one of the major tourism areas that we have with Bangladesh is medical tourism. So if I'm not wrong, around 3 to 4 lakh medical tourists, they come to India every year, right? And recently, IWEC had put in visa closures for a lot of Bangladeshi students. If I'm not wrong, the last I checked, they've been open for certain emergency cases and for education, if that's correct. But from what I could foresee, the elections are not going to happen like maybe in an year or so. So when do we look forward to the opening of visas for normal tourists? And especially for medical tourism, because if that's not going to happen, the people, they'd have to resort to other places like Singapore, like Maldives, which I think are the go-to destinations apart from India. But that's going to be very costly for them. So how do we go about that?
Wonderful to see this discussion. My question is to Professor Shahab Khan. I didn't quite get what you mentioned in the last bite of yours about the Chinese ambassador meeting everybody. Everybody who? You meant the political parties or? Okay. And in continuation, was there any exodus from the many Chinese who are there for defense projects and other projects, civil infrastructure projects? And how do you see them connecting with the interim government, which is going to be there as per you at least for a year?
To begin with, you said we have relation with government to government and B2B or G2G. So can we say that we are going to sacrifice Sheikh Hasina because nobody is giving her asylum? So she will be compelled to go back to Bangladesh and she may be prosecuted and maybe hanged also. Second question to Professor Shah.
Ji.
To begin with, the USA and China were the main player to create this situation. Now they are keeping silence. So what is their game plan? How they are going to deal with this situation? Thank you.
Nanda Gupta from Strat News Global. I just have a very quick question. There's a headline which I see in front of me which says, looks at question to Dr. Professor Khan. Sorry. Professor Khan, there's a headline which I'm reading right now which says that, which essentially looks like Jamaat, protesting against the national anthem because it was written by Tagore. And then says that it is clear that secularism in Bangladesh was an elite enterprise unsupported by the masses. Would you agree?
My name is Madhushri Duvedi. I'm from ICWA. I just wanted to ask that if Awami League was in power since 2009 and now that Sheikh Hasina is out of India, what is going to happen to Awami League in Bangladesh?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Siddharth Abror from DCAC Pol Science Honors. My question is to Sumriti ma'am. There have been incidents regarding Hindu targeted Hindu violence in Bangladesh. So is the Hindu community being targeted, or the Awami League vote bank is being targeted? And if Awami League vote bank is targeted, then are the Muslims who are in support of Awami League getting under the cover of being against the Awami League or not? Thank you.
For the answers, Smriti, I think you have some. So you go first. Professor Khan can go next. Ambassador Das can finish it all off because she's to blame anyways for everything that's happening.
Thank you. I don't have much question, but I also would like to draw everybody's attention to Yunus's address to nation at 7:30 today. So probably that will provide us a lot of answer, which you have been discussing now. What is happening to Awami League? I would say that, both BNP and Awami League, in spite of what Awami League did to the BNP, has more than 30% of public support. That is something which is given. And that is the other 40% which decides who will come to power. And these are grassroots political parties, including whatever support Jamaat has. They have support on the ground. So therefore, I would say that currently, of course, the Awami League is in back foot because of what the leaders have done in the last few years. Obviously, Hasina leaving in such a manner has, in fact, there were also interviews where, people have not named them, said that, the manner in which she left, many of the party workers are demoralized. But we really do not know what happened in the last minute, what was the negotiation between her and, the army chief. What exactly brought her here? What did the Indian government exactly said when this request was made? There are many gray areas which you really do not know. That is where whenever people speak of extradition of Sheikh Hasina, I always ask that, first, why didn't the army take her to the custody? Because it is army. They can provide the security which nobody else can provide. To try her for the corruption, misgovernance, all that she did. Once you send her in the military aircraft to Delhi and they say you extradite. So the right kind of question should be asked to the powerful people. Why not? To them. So I always have thought about it. As far as the Hindu community is concerned, yes, the attacks, anywhere the vulnerable community are always, at the receiving end. So the Hindu community were attacked because they are perceived. I'm not saying all of them do support the Awami League, maybe the majority of them, but there are quite a few Hindu leaders in the BNP also. So the Hindu community were targeted because they were seen as supporters of the Awami League. And there is, people in Bangladesh tell me there is also economic aspect of the property and all to be grabbed. And the Awami League workers were equally targeted. So it's not just the Hindu community, the Awami League workers were also equally targeted. Now, somebody told me, I was reading some of the posts of some people who played a very significant role in the student movement. People are asking, the manner in which the prosecution happened during Hasina's time, the same manner it is happening at present. Like, for example, a murder case will be registered, against Hasina and 20 others. And what I read from those, because it's very difficult to know, newspapers are not writing, so through your own, when you speak to people, the 20 others is filled up by whomever you can grab. Put them in that 20 others. So Hasina, then, Salman F. Rahman, then blah, 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 all those people. So that is the kind of thing happening. Exactly, as I saw, what was happening during Hasina's period, many of the things are being repeated. And I really do not know, actually what is the end result. It's the same revenge politics, is the same. So I have been watching Bangladesh for a very long time. So I see the same kind of cycle again happening. I don't know. I think it's a time they should get out of this. The reforms we have seen 2007-8, there were reforms which were introduced, brought in by the military-backed caretaker regime now. Now people are also speaking of reform. We really do not know what that will end at. So therefore, I would say that but I would say that Bangladesh people are definitely pro-democracy. They always want to participate in the election, no matter whomever they elect. So therefore, I would say that both the political parties will stand a chance. We saw after 2 years when the election happened, in spite of what BNP did between 2001 to 2006, I'm not speaking of India internally, especially the 2005 bomb blast, the Chittagong, this thing, jetty, the 21st August, attack on the Awami League rally. In spite of that, people are very angry. But then again, it got 30 seats when it contested the election after 2 years. So I think these are historical parties, so there is a chance of them surviving.
FIR story sounds so much like Pakistan. This is what they do out there as well. Anyways, but Professor Shahab, the floor is yours. There is a number of questions. I've lost track of how many questions were put to you. I'm sure you've kept track. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Too many questions, but what I love about this discussion is that we're quite free and frank. I apologize at the beginning if I skip anyone's question because it was very difficult for me to keep track of all the questions. The first question, let me put it in my own way so that it becomes a narrative in itself. The Chinese ambassador. Well, I mentioned when I mentioned Chinese ambassador, I mentioned that he immediately on the 6th and 7th of that was the time still the political parties or caretaker government was not in function, reached out to all the political parties because you are absolutely correct that there is a huge number of Chinese people are working in Bangladesh, the huge number of investment going on, and it was very pragmatic of him to really go and everywhere. And then, of course, when the interim government came, it is same thing that what Washington did, Beijing did the same thing. So I think they had a similar approach to the post Sheikh Hasina, and they were prepared for that since the movement took place. This is one. There's a small disclaimer to our great host. I didn't compare between Subramaniam Swamy or Bangladesh or any. What I meant is that these examples are everywhere, and we can go and count on these examples, but that doesn't really mean that we are comparing each other. But certainly, what I'm reflecting on is what people essentially banks on sometimes. Yes, there is the question about whether people are going and lynching, mob lynching, and I wrote about it last week. And by saying that this bulldozer justice or media trial is not helping, and in many cases, in fact, the advisors came out and gave a statement by saying a lot of cases that has been filed against Awami Leaguers are essentially going to make the cases weaker. And that's where I wanted to touch upon what Ambassador Das has mentioned. And it's the same case when I looked into many of the cases against all those who were kept in jail on the ground of extremism. And I looked into that. This is not a problem of terrorism. Rather, the problem of the guy who has lost the case and the guy who was at the legal system. And therefore, I think when you go for a neutral judgment at this case at this moment, and this cases gets dropped off, and whether we should blame extremism or the legal proceedings or the guy who has filed the case or who has investigated, that's something. And I have written extensively about it, that the public prosecutors in Bangladesh are one of the most alarming figures who are absolutely no idea about how, in many cases, how to file DSA cases, how to file anti-terrorism cases, and so on. And that was bound to happen. And this has been echoed by the current advisors too. The question about the future of Awami League is very important. And I think Shruti has rightly mentioned, it is too early to say whether Awami League will perish or Awami League will return to the public. And a few days back, the question was if Bangladesh goes for an election which is quote, inclusive, unquote, then the situation is different. And if it goes through the same prescription that Awami League had, that participatory and credible, then the answer is absolutely different. That's something that we have to wait and see. It's been only 4 weeks, frankly speaking. 4 weeks, police is still grasping. Even if you look at the bureaucracy is in a deep shamble at the moment. People are writing their own promotion. People are writing that. So that's a problem that will happen in a transition. As I mentioned earlier, that when Dr. Yunus came, did he have any kind of political party? I mean, look at the Awami League, and I mentioned that this is a system where from prime minister to a khatib of a mosque or an imam, everybody fled away. So that's a perennial, that's a massive problem that we have incurred. When it comes to the insurgent groups, yes, I do agree that there was a case of insurgent group. This is exactly the reason why both all the political parties and the Indian political parties and certainly Indian government and the interim government at some point of time should come together when the dust settles down. I mean, this is too high. We also have to understand this is only 4 weeks. So I think this sort of discussion today or tomorrow will take place for the betterment of both the sides. And that's why I think the best strategy at the moment is to wait and see at least for a few more days. As Shruti has mentioned, that chief advisor is probably going to give a new direction today. I mean, the last time when he addressed the nation, it was only 2 weeks. What is he going to tell you? I mean, is he going to tell that 6 months of time I'm going to hold an election? If he cannot reform the election commission, no one wants to be the vice chancellor of any of the universities in Bangladesh, because they think that if we become vice chancellor, then things may not go in the right order. That's a massive problem that this interim government incurred. There is a very difficulty. I mean, a lot of people have been offered to become the chair of the Public Service Commission. Is it people are ready? Many of the people are not. I mean, this is a major problem. That's why the term human resources came up repeatedly. So the vacuum is really, really deep. And the last point that I would like to focus on, and I think this is where the large issue lies. Whenever we are reading any kind of prime ministerial statement coming from Delhi or any other places, it's all about one group of people. I still couldn't see. I mean, you see that 700 plus people died, I mean, over 2 weeks of time. And that's something that has not been discussed. There's no empathy from many of the corners. And particularly Awami League's one of the greatest peril was that they forgot to be empathized to the causes that the students came up with. I mean, look at the 700. I mean, where would you get to see in a civil, in a civic society that their own people opens live fire against own people? I mean, that's exactly the problem that we have to incur, and that's where most of the concerns will be there. I do see that the relationship between Bangladesh and India will always be very important for anyone who comes to power. And do we think that Jamaat and BNP doesn't understand it? Of course they do understand. The problem is whether Delhi understands that they understand what they understand. So I think rather than having a lot of questions about or perceived denial or perhaps living in bubble is probably not going to give us the best solutions. Rather, pragmatic conversation with Dhaka, whether it is civil society and the new civil society mandate in Dhaka. I mean, not that define the civil society that, you go and mix X and Y. And Ambassador Das is here. I mean, I can just spell out one of my very personal experience 2 months back regarding my own visa. It took 3 months and I couldn't get my passport back. I mean, then we're talking about 1960s, 17s, going back to, the rail line and everything. And goddamn, I couldn't get my passport back in 3 months. I don't think that sort of reality is often being discussed in Delhi. And perhaps in future, I think we have to be much more pragmatic. And I think Delhi has an incredible resources, incredible civil society, which can always come together and create a better atmosphere between these two countries. Thank you very much.
But let Ambassador Das have the last word.
Thank you, thank you. I'll be very brief because we are really late. Bangladesh and India have a very vast relationship. It's a multifaceted relationship, and every possible aspect of human endeavor is covered in the relationship. No matter what who says, from making satellites together to nuclear technology to training to people, everything is covered. So we don't have to box everything into G2G or people to people. Or so Sheikh Hasina's continued stay in India will be a completely political issue. It's a political decision, and it's well within India's right, I think, to take this decision. On tourism, of course, medical tourism is very, very high. The largest tourist intake into India is Bangladeshi nationals. There was a time when we were issuing 16 lakh, 17 lakh, 15 lakh visas from the consulate. During Eid, a tiny little place like Agartala, from there 2,000, 3,000 people cross in a day. The intensity of movement of people is very, very high. The visa issuing authorities, as far as I know, have not opened because there was a law and order situation. And I think there was a law and order situation inside a visa office somewhere near Jeshore or somewhere. So that will take a little time to open. It's a massive operation. You can imagine the amount of manpower which is required to do. Largest number of visas is given to Bangladeshis, and except for a processing fee, the visa doesn't cost anything. The processing fee is taken by the SBI, which is our processing agency there. So medical tourism, I think, will thrive because people have ongoing medical issues. Regarding railway projects, I think obviously the 3 passenger trains are not going anywhere. Because people, a lot of people who are not exactly elites, people who cannot afford air tickets, actually use the trains. Trains are always booked. And look at this station, the connection to New Jalpaiguri. New Jalpaiguri means you are straight there. You can go to Darjeeling, Sikkim, the closest you can come to the snow. So people love these 3 train links that we have with Khulna Jashore. It's a Khulna Jashore Kolkata is it's a very important link. So I don't think passenger railway links are going anywhere. As far as the freight trains are concerned, freight rate also depends upon how much the traders use this, because during COVID we saw 130% increase in freight trains, because that was the only way in which people trade could take place while maintaining COVID health norms. Bangladesh Railway has, I think, their earning only in the year 22-23 was 117 crores of revenue from the railway movement between India and Bangladesh. So this is, the railways is something in which I think there is a meeting of interest on both sides. When goods come by train, it comes faster, it is cleared faster. I would hope that the existing railway links will be maintained, and the 2 new connections which are coming up, the Shahbazpur connection to Mahisasan up to Karimganj. That's a fantastic link to up to Karimganj. As regards the latest trade and transit treaty which was signed during the last state visit of then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, that I think anybody can look at the MOU. It is very clear because it is said that Bangladesh is getting nothing in return. The MOU clearly says that Bangladesh will get reciprocal rail rights to go to Nepal, Bhutan. Bhutan doesn't have rail connectivity, but those reciprocal rights are very much there. So I would think, I'm very hopeful, I'm an optimist, and I think railways, we've seen a fabulous growth in how we've integrated ourselves to the railways, and that's the hope for the future. It's climate friendly, it's cheaper, and both countries benefit.
Thank you so much to everybody. Thank you most of all to this entire panel. I thought it was a fabulous discussion. Very good to hear from you, Professor Shahab. Thank you so much, Ambassador Das. And last but not the least, my friend Dr. Patnaik. And of course, my 2 colleagues who've put this whole thing together, Shivam, who's going to be responsible for me reaching home very late because of the late timing. And of course, Komal, who's put together the technicals of this entire meeting so we could all hear you clearly. So thanks a lot. And we hope to see you next month for another edition of Neighborhood Scope. Thank you.